Good morning, everyone. So we are here now to try to import our data regarding the technology monitoring to Microsoft Power BI. And the goal is that of preparing clusters of pattern families based on patterns of classification codes which are shared by several pattern families. So I just try to share my screen in order to show you what the expected result is. And you should see here the result. So we have one table which includes several columns. The first one referring to DocDB family IDs. So pattern families, simple pattern families according to the EPO definition. And in the following columns, we can see different classification codes specifying the main group level. So this is an array in which there are only two kinds of values, 0 to mean that a given classification code is not present in a given pattern family, while 1 denotes that that specific classification code belongs to that specific pattern families. Having said that, we have a series of slicers that allow us to select pattern families based on the presence or absence of a given classification code. So in this bar diagram, we see that there is a ranking of the classification code, so that C12Q001 is the most frequently assigned code. So this bar diagram helps us to define which may be possible clusters of IPC classification codes that help us to define pattern family clusters. So for example, we see that there are two classification codes which are most frequently assigned. And so if we click on one in the first and in the second slicer, respectively referring to the two classification codes most frequently assigned, we note that in the above table, we have a kind of cluster in which the first two columns both share the value 1. And of course, if we go on in this way, we can select the pattern families in order to narrow down the number of pattern families belonging to one specific cluster. For example, if I click also this number 1, then we see that the number of pattern families is reduced to only 20, which are included and listed in this table. Okay, this is what we want to do. Now, I just close this window, save, and try to repeat the exercise showing you how to import the data in Microsoft Power BI. So I have prepared a file which I named exercise, in which I will repeat the operations that allow us to get the results we have seen so far. Just give 1 minute to the application to open. Okay. Now I share the screen. So first of all, we need to import data. And we have this file, Excel file, which is named array NGS tech monitor. I say open. So as you can see, we can import several tables which are listed here. And so I import all of them, just clicking on the box. You see that as I click in each box, a different array is displayed. And then eventually I say load. It takes a while. And it says that the operation is completed. In fact, okay, apply changes. Just let's wait another 20, 30 seconds. Okay, so we can check the relationship between the different tables. And as we can see, okay, this is the complete array, which is connected to each of the other tables loaded because of the presence of identical DocDB family ID values. And the relation is bidirectional. So if we change the content of the table, of one table, for example, the array, the other slicers change as consequence. So let's go back on the main menu. And now, very simply, we just click on this icon and you see that a table is displayed. Here we can import the DocDB family ID values, which is in Italian called famiglie. Okay. And then, one by one, we import all the other values corresponding to each classification code. I need to say don't summarize, otherwise the table displays the total, the patent families belonging to a specific classification code. And I go on like this until the last classification code. It's very simple. Okay, so now we have our array. And now we need to build up the slicers. So let's close filters. This is the icon corresponding to one slicer. Let's reduce the dimension. And then we start from the first array. We need to select a menu that allows to flag 0 or 1. So this is one possibility, but we choose another one. We choose slicer setting and we choose vertical list. So as you can see, we have the first classification code here. And I just enlarge a little bit. If I click on 0, you see that now the first column of the array contains patent families who were not assigned with the A61K0045 IPC classification code. Whereas if I click 1, the first column change displaying only 1 as value, and all the other columns change as consequence depending on the assignment of the other classification codes. Then I can go on. I can just copy paste, for example, this slicer. Okay. And then simply change the name. Okay. So if now, for example, I flag 1 and 1, the first two columns refer to the patent families to whom both A61 K0045 and A61 P0035 IPC classification codes are assigned. And I can go on like this, building up new slicers. For example, this one that will take the values of the third classification code. Again, I need to change the slicer setting in order to get a vertical list. And this, as you see, if I click the value 1 for A61 K0045, there is only one possibility for C12M0001, which is 0. In fact, if I deflag the number 1 for the first classification codes, C12M0001 can take two values, 0 or 1. And in fact, I see that there are some patent families which are assigned with this specific classification code. So fine. And then we go on until we reach the last classification code. Then we can group several classification codes. Very simply, I select them. And then in format, I see this menu group. If I click on group, all the classification, all the slicers are grouped together, and I can move the whole panel with the slicers. Okay, so far so good. Then we need to build up the bar diagram showing the ranking of the classification codes. So in order to do this, I just click on this icon. Okay, just change the dimension. And then I need to import again the array. So array NGS Tech Monitor, open. Fine. I just click on array, and before loading it, I switch to Power Query to modify a little bit the data before importing them in Microsoft Power BI. So now we access the Power Query just clicking on Transform Data. Okay. Let me share the page where the Power Query appears. So as you can see, I have here array IPC2 evidence, which is the one displayed here. So in the first column, the DocDB family ID values, with the right button of the mouse, I click and I said unpivot other columns. Fine. Once this has been done, I say close and apply. Okay, now I switch again to the other screen. So now if I go to the list of tables, I see that there is the table that I have just imported linked to the copy of this table in which the entire array is displayed. I just want to make the relationship bidirectional. So in the cross filter direction menu, I choose both and I say OK. And you see now that a double arrows appear. Fine. So if I inspect the value of this table, array EPC2, I see exactly the list of the DocDB family IDs value and the classification codes. And 0 means absence from that specific family, while 1 means presence in that specific family. Now the list is very long, so we don't see that. Okay, doesn't matter. So I switch here to array IPC2, and on the y-axis, I want to display the classification codes. So I just click on attribute, while on the x-axis, I display the values, the sum of the values actually, so that we see here that the number of the C12Q001 is the highest, which means that this is the most frequently assigned classification codes. How many times? Okay, we just need to add labels to the bar. Okay, data labels on values. This is a kind of scientific format. We just select known. And so this tells me that the C12Q001 IPC classification code is assigned to over 2,500 patent families. And then the other codes follow. So now I have the idea of what is the ranking of the classification code. If I want to visualize in a greater detail, I just add another tool. And I say here, include the values. Oh, sorry, this is not the correct one. Families. Okay, count listings. So we have over 3,000 patent families, which is the total of the number of patent families included in the list. So if, for example, I select a pattern which hypothetically is made with these three classification codes, you see that the number is reduced. So there are 77 families sharing the presence of A61K0045. If I then add A61P0035, the number of the families is further reduced. And there are also 40 families sharing the C12Q0001. I haven't done the slicer for this classification code, but if we scroll the array, we see that this column is just full of 1. So, having said that, I just wish to thank you for the attention and see you for the next exercise with Microsoft Power BI.